everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. So the day that you all are seeing this is December 14th, which is my birthday, specifically my 30th birthday. How am I 30 years old? I don't know, but I recently saw a video that McKay from Oh Hey It's McKay did, where for her 26th birthday she made a video where she talked about 26 books that she loved, and I adored that idea so much that I decided to use it myself. So today I'm going to be talking about 30 books that I love. This is not a comprehensive list. This isn't necessarily my 30 all-time favorite books. These are just 30 books that have impacted my life in some way, or I have just loved throughout my life, basically. So without further ado, let's just jump right on into it. I have a ton of books stacked here next to me, and I am so excited to talk about all of them. So first up, I wanted to talk about two books and series that are childhood favorites of mine. So the first series I want to bring up is the Pony Pal series by Jean Betancourt. Did anybody else read this series growing up? I was obsessed, and I mean obsessed, with horses when I was about, I'd say 6 to 10 years old. Like, that was my main obsession. And so this is a series that centers around this group of friends known as the Pony Pals, and there's always like a mystery or suspenseful kind of plot in every book, and I think there's like over 30 books in this series. I don't think I read the entirety of the series, but I definitely read a good chunk of these books, and I just love them so much that I had to mention them in this video. Next, I have to talk about another iconic, truly iconic series. That is the Click series by Lissy Harrison. When I tell you guys, this series had me in a chokehold when I was in middle school. Oh my God. Like, this was everything that my middle school heart could have asked for from a book series. So this basically centers around three best friends who go to this private elite school. They're very rich, very wealthy families for sure. And then we have Claire, who her and her mother come to live on Massey's family's estate. And so immediately Massey and her friends just hate this girl and are horrible to her, and there's so much drama and tea. I'm obsessed. One of the things that I'll never forget about this series is that at the end of every few chapters, Massey has like an in and out list of like either fashion things or people that are in or out in her life. Just iconic. There's like over 9 books in the series. I don't remember if I read the whole series, but yeah. So much fun. Next, I want to mention the one book and series that I don't have a physical copy of. That is Sweat and Soap by Kintetsu Yamada. This is a romance manga series that I discovered earlier this year in 2022, and oh my God, my love for this series and this couple knows no bounds. Yes, this is kind of a weird plot and premise, but let's face it, a lot of manga are weird. So this centers around Asako Notori. It's a workplace romance. They work at this soap company together, and initially Notori is attracted to Asako because of her scent, the way that she smells. Meanwhile, she's very self-conscious about the way that she smells because she sweats a lot, and this is the most adorable and sweet and wholesome romance ever. I have teared up multiple times while reading the first 4 volumes of this series. There's only 11 volumes total, so I've definitely been savoring them. But oh my God, this is my top manga recommendation. Just so good. Next, I think I'm just gonna randomly pick and choose from this pile of books next to me. I have some YA books that I want to talk about. First of all, we have the Illuminae Files by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. This is such a cool and fascinating sci-fi series that has like multimedia aspects to it. There's a lot of different like dossier files and transcripts of conversations and things like that to read. Each book centers around a different group of characters, but centers around the same space war that's basically happening between 2 mega corporations, and there's a very interesting AI named Aiden thrown into the mix here, and oh my God, this is just absolutely incredible. Next up, I have Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. I read this back in 2018, I believe, and this book blew me away. Oh my goodness, this is told in verse, and this centers around Will. His older brother Sean has been shot dead, and so Will now is hell-bent on getting revenge against the person who killed his brother. So he gets on the elevator in his apartment building to go enact this revenge, but at each floor the elevator stops and the ghost of someone from his life steps onto the elevator and talks to Will. It's haunting, it's beautiful, it's stunning. I definitely need to reread this soon now that I'm talking about it, and look at all the awards it's won, and it is absolutely deserving of all of those. Next up, we have another award-winning YA book that totally deserves all of the accolades. That is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is also told in verse, and you can tell that I loved this book so much that when I reread it, I had to tab it up and annotate my copy. This one is about Xiomara, and it's about her navigating high school, navigating her sexual awakening, and being in a household with a mother who is extremely religious. And she also ends up joining a slam poetry club at her school. I feel like I'm gonna say the same thing about a lot of the books on this list, obviously, because I love them so much, but the writing of this is next level. The audiobook is incredible, by the way, because it is narrated by Elizabeth Acevedo herself. Next up, let's see. Oh, we have a couple of books by the Queen, Taylor Jenkins Reid. I have to mention The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I have now read this book twice. I've also read the next book I'm going to talk about twice as well. But this is just an iconic and incredible historical fiction novel that I recommend to everyone, even people that aren't in the booktube community, like friends and family who are coming to me for book recommendations. This is usually one of the books that I recommend because it has a universal appeal to it. It's about Evelyn Hugo, who gives me vibes of Marilyn Monroe and Elizabeth Taylor, and we see through flashbacks, because she's giving an exclusive interview to our other main character, Monique, we see the development of her life and her career and why she had 7 husbands, and this is just incredible. I wish that Evelyn Hugo was a real person so that I could go watch her movies. And then the other Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I have to bring up is Daisy Jones and the Six, another truly iconic story. So amazing to me that I ended up reading this twice in the same year, which is unheard of for me. Usually when I reread a book, it's a few years down the road when I kind of want to relive the experience. But I just adored specifically the audiobook of this so much that I had to reread it or re-listen to it a few months later. This is just a captivating story about Daisy Jones, our main character, and how she eventually forms this band with the Six. So it's Daisy Jones and the Six. So it's the rise and fall of this group and of her life in general. And it's just, again, a captivating story. I wish this band was real so that I could listen to their music. It's just another next level story. And I'm so excited because Amazon Prime is coming out with a series very soon, I think. Probably within the next few months or so, because I've been seeing a lot of different announcements about it. And side note, one of my best friends actually got a small role in the TV series adaptation, which is just so exciting. Then let's dive on into some more YA books that I have on this list. Next up is Clockwork Princess. This is a very reflective cover. This is book 3 in the Infernal Devices series by Cassandra Clare, which is one of the series in her Shadowhunter Chronicles universe. The Infernal Devices trilogy definitely is my favorite series within the whole universe. I think that Cassandra Clare's writing style really lends itself to the historical setting. This takes place in the 1870s. This also has probably my favorite love triangle ever. I don't think anything will ever top it. We have our main character Tessa pictured here, and then there is Will Herondale and Jem Carstairs, and wow, the love that the three of them share with each other. There's just so much angst, and there's so many incredible side characters in this series as well, and just the way that this trilogy as a whole wrapped up. This third book is perfection in my opinion, and that epilogue wrecked me in the best way possible. Next up, I had to bring up some iconic YA series that I absolutely adore and will probably love until the day I die, if we're being quite honest. So next up, I have to bring up the Hunger Games trilogy, specifically Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. This is just such an incredible story. I mean, come on, how iconic is it that for the Quarter Quell Hunger Games, they pull tributes from past winners? Like, come on, plot twist, you know? And this is just a trilogy that I think is going to be a YA classic for years and years to come, and deservedly so. I adore this trilogy and this story with my whole heart. And then next up, I had to mention the Vampire Academy series by Rochelle Mead. I also want to throw in the Bloodline series, which is a direct spin-off of this one. So I'm gonna lump that in here. But this is another iconic YA series about vampires that go to this private elite boarding school, and talk about addictive. I love this world that Rochelle Mead created. It feels very unique, even though this came out kind of around the Twilight era. It definitely stands on its own, and I think that for the most part, it has aged well. There are a couple of things going on in this series in particular that maybe are a little bit but for the most part, it's amazing, and I definitely want to reread this soon. Then I have to bring up Wolf by Wolf by Ryan Groudon. This is a duology that completely blew me away when I read this, I believe in 2020, like late 2020 into 2021. This is just such a cool and unique story, and in my opinion, the author executed it just immaculately. Like, it's just absolutely incredible. So this is about Yael. This takes place in 1957 in a world where the Axis powers, so Germany and Japan, won World War II. So we are living in a world where the Holocaust is absolutely still going on, and Yael is Jewish. She was in a concentration camp, and she was experimented upon with this serum that gave her the ability to now be a shapeshifter. She can change her appearance to look like basically anyone. And in this world, there is an annual motorcycle race that is absolutely insane, where only German and Japanese teenagers can compete. And basically the track runs from what is known as Germania, which was Berlin, and so it goes all the way through into Africa, into like the entirety of Asia basically, and up all the way to Tokyo. And so Yael shifts herself to look like one of the racers, takes their place. Her mission, because she does now work for a spy agency, her mission is to win the race, get close enough to Hitler to kill him. And oh my god, this reads like a movie to me, especially this first book. The first sentence of this book lives in my head rent-free, so I'm gonna read it to you. Once upon a different time, there was a girl who lived in a kingdom of death. I mean, come on. So amazing. I don't feel like nearly enough people have read this duet. Definitely give it a chance. Another YA book that totally took me by surprise and blew me away when I read it was Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer. So a lot of you may know Bridget Kemmerer because she wrote the Curse So Dark and Lonely series. She has been coming out with her Defy the Night series, so she's delving more into YA fantasy. She is amazing at writing YA contemporaries, in my opinion, and this was the first one that I had read from her. And this is about Juliet and Declan. So Juliet is dealing with a lot because her mother recently passed, and Declan is just dealing with a lot of demons of his past. He's going through a tough time. So Declan, I think, is doing community service at the cemetery, and Juliet has been leaving letters on her mother's grave, and so Declan reads these letters, and so that leads to the two of them meeting, and this was absolutely incredible. I remember when I read this, I did not want the book to end. I was literally like stopping every few pages towards the end because I was just trying to savor my experience. Next up, I want to bring up The Afterlife of Holly Chase, and it's actually perfect that I'm talking about this book because this does center around Christmas. This is a YA contemporary, I guess you could say speculative novel. It is basically a retelling of A Christmas Carol, and in my opinion, it's done so well. I read this book twice at this point, and the second time that I read it in particular really got me. I was like bawling my eyes out, crying towards the end of this. But this is about our main character, Holly. She's 16 at the beginning of this book. She's kind of an awful person. So she is visited by a ghost from someone in her life that warns her to, you know, change her ways. She doesn't listen, and so she gets in a car accident and passes away. So she wakes up as a ghost, basically, and now she is working for this company called Project Scrooge, where each year a Scrooge-like person is chosen, and on Christmas Eve every year they try to change this person's ways. And so the person that is picked on this particular year is a 17-year-old boy named Ethan, and so Holly finds herself falling for this guy. Things get very interesting from there, and this is absolutely one of my all-time favorite books. I love how Cynthia Hand made this story her own, and I just think it's absolutely spectacular. And I remember the first time I read this, I didn't really like the ending, but then the second time I read it, I absolutely adored it. So I definitely think there's a lot of things to think about with this book. So good. I kind of want to reread it ASAP since it is Christmas time right now. Then we have My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. So this is a book that I read in 2020. I had to bring it up for this video because this is a book that I can distinctly remember to this day how I felt reading this book. It is very dark, it is very heavy, but it is incredibly written, and there absolutely is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it is so worth your time, I promise. So this is about Vanessa. We are time jumping between early 2000s when she was about 15 years old and then present day when she's now 27. So when she was 15 at this elite boarding school, she started a sexual relationship with her English teacher. And so let me just say, there are parts of this book, actually most of this book is very hard to read. The author is not holding back. She goes into everything. Like, I just want to throw that out there. And so then we're seeing at the age of 27 how she's been living her life since then, and how she still hasn't come to terms with the fact that that was a messed up and abusive relationship. And when I was reading it, like, it was a very heavy reading experience, but again, just so worth it, and the ending made me cry. And there's also a really great author's note and interview with the author and the audiobook narrator. So I definitely recommend listening to the audiobook so that you can listen to that interview as well. So beautiful, so dark, and so amazing. All right, let's talk about a few more YA series, and then I have some fantasy books and adult romances. I don't think I've talked about any adult romances yet in this video, but I promise that they are coming. So next up, I have to talk about The Extraordinaries by TJ Klune. This is a YA trilogy that takes place in a world where superheroes exist, and there are also a lot of queer characters, a lot of queer romances going on in this. It's so funny, it's so campy. It centers around Nick, who writes self-insert fan fiction where he is having a romance with Shadowstar, who is a very famous superhero in their city, and this is his best friend Seth, and it's just a lot of superhero shenanigans. I will say I was a bit disappointed by the third and final book called Heatwave, but this first book and Flashfire book 2 are absolute perfection in my opinion. They have a very unique vibe to them. I adore TJ Klune's writing style and his humor. So overall, I cannot recommend this series highly enough. And this first book is probably still my favorite of the trilogy. Then, this is a series that I have not talked about probably since I read the third and final book a couple years ago, which is crazy. But that is the Scythe trilogy by Neil Shusterman. I adore this utopian, also kind of dystopian trilogy. So this takes place in a world where there's no hunger, there's no war, there's no illness. Virtually everything is perfect because everything is controlled by this AI known as the Thunderhead. So it basically just takes care of everyone on the planet. And so because of that, to keep the population controlled, there are people known as scythes, and they have a quota that they have to meet to kill a certain amount of people to make sure that the population is controlled. So we have two main characters, Citra and Rowan, and they become scythes in training, and so much more happens. I adore every book in this trilogy equally. I know a lot of people were disappointed by the third and final book, but I personally loved it, and I loved the way that this ended. And then another one of my top favorite YA series of all time is definitely The Diviners by Libba Bray. This is such a cool and unique concept to it. It is a paranormal series that takes place in the 1920s in New York City, and we have a very eclectic cast of characters that we're following. So this first book is basically a murder mystery. We have our main character, Evie O'Neill. She has the ability to read objects, so when she picks an object up, she can see visions of who its past owners were and things like that. And so we see throughout the series, we meet more and more teenagers that also have these crazy supernatural abilities. And this is just such an amazing cast of characters. And I love the way that Libba Bray doesn't shy away from the very real and awful things that were going on in the 1920s, such as the Chinese Exclusion Act and eugenics and things like that. There's a really interesting and fascinating villain throughout this story as well. It's just absolute perfection to me. Next up, I want to talk about The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, also known as the Folk of the Air series. And what's really exciting about me bringing up this series right now is that I just recently announced that I am hosting a Folk of the Air read-along in January of next year. So I am co-hosting this read-along with Christy, Melissa, Chandler, and Samantha. I'm gonna have all of them linked down in the description below. So all of the information for this read-along is going to be on my Instagram. All of my social media links are always linked down in the description below. So I'm even more excited to talk about this series at the moment. But if you are curious, I got this amazing dust jacket from the Dusty shop. I will also link them down in the description below. They recently had an incredible Black Friday sale, so I snagged some amazing dust jackets for some of my favorite series. But this is just an iconic enemies to lovers YA fantasy series. We have our main characters Jude and Carden, and so this takes place both in the human world that we know as well as the land of the Fae, and it's mainly about Jude, a human, finding her place in the land of the Fae and her going toe-to-toe with Carden and eventually falling for each other. But this series has so many morally gray characters. It's incredible. Like, the characters are absolutely the best part of the series, in my opinion. Like, yes, there's an amazing story as well, but the characters, especially Jude, she's absolutely one of my favorite characters of all time. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So I'm even more excited to do this read along next month because I can't wait to discuss all of these books with you guys during our live shows. And then, I mean, come on, I couldn't do a video like this and not bring up a couple of Sarah J. Maas books. So I had to bring up Queen of Shadows. So this is another dust jacket that I got from the Dusty shop. I am absolutely obsessed. Like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? This is book 4 of the Throne of Glass series, which is absolutely my top favorite fantasy series of all time. I'm actually currently rereading Kingdom of Ash, which is the final book of the series, because we are doing a live show discussion on my channel for SJM Along. That's going to be on December 18th. So I will link the date and time for that down in the description. But book 4, this book in particular, oh my God, like, there's so many epic scenes that live in my head rent-free, and the way that different storylines and different characters converge together in the last 100 pages or so, it's unreal. I did do a vlog series when I read this series for the first time, so I do recommend watching the vlog that I did for this book in particular, because you can just see me freaking out right after finishing this book. Oh my god, like, I was not prepared for how amazing and epic this book in particular is. And then when it comes to the ACOTAR series, I think my favorite book will always be A Court of Silver Flames. I am currently waiting on the dust jackets that I bought from the Dusty Shop for this series. I'm very excited about them, but I need them in my hands ASAP. This book means so much to me because we finally get Nesta's POV. We're finally getting her story, her romance with Cassian. I am trash for a grumpy, icy heroine with a sunshiny, charming hero. We definitely have that dynamic going on in this story. There's also a lot going on with the world as a whole, and I really love the plot and the direction that it went in this installment, but when it comes down to it, I relate to Nesta so much, it's almost scary. Like, so when anybody says they hate Nesta after reading this book, I feel a little attacked. Another book that I absolutely had to bring up in a video like this is Manacled by Senlin Yu. And I have been truly blessed by my friend Mel from Mel Binds Fix. I will absolutely link her down in the description below. She gifted me this physical copy that she made herself of this amazing, incredible Harry Potter fan fiction. I'm actually gonna take the dust jacket off because I think that the naked hardback is incredible. Look at this. Like, you gotta be joking me. Anytime I look at this book on my shelves, it just makes me feel incredibly happy. Oh my god. And then this little bookmark thing, like, are you joking? But this is basically a fan fiction where the idea of the surrogacy program from The Handmaid's Tale comes together with the Harry Potter world, and this deviates from canon during Order of the Phoenix, which is the 5th book of the series. This is a very, very, very dark fantasy romance between Draco Malfoy and Hermione Granger, and how, because of this really fucked up surrogacy program, she ends up being a surrogate for Draco and his wife. And talk about a truly epic story. It's giant, over 1,000 pages, but my god, is it worth your time and energy. Like, I was in like the worst book hangover ever after finishing this. This is a story that will absolutely live in my head rent-free for years and years to come. All right, we finally made it to the adult romances. So I have 3 historical romances that I have to bring up. First one is The Duchess Deal by Tessa Dare. This is absolutely, without a doubt, hands down, my favorite historical romance of all time. Arguably my favorite romance novel of all time. That's very hard to claim, but definitely my favorite historical romance. Just an incredible marriage of convenience rom-com. Absolutely has Beauty and the Beast vibes to it. Ash and Emma have my heart. Ash, the hero in this, is pretty much my book husband, definitely one of my book boyfriends. He is the most hilarious grumpy hero you will ever read about, and I have this very special copy that was signed by the Queen Tessa Dare herself that my friend Samantha got for me, and this copy will always mean so much to me. But I have read this twice now. I want to reread it another time very soon because that's just how much I love it, and it just makes me so happy. Then I have to bring up again The Magic by Lisa Kleypas, hands down my favorite romance that I have read from Lisa Kleypas, which is really saying something because I've given a good chunk of her books that I've read 5 stars. The way that she crafts her romance novels is absolutely unmatched in my opinion. This is an incredible second chance romance between McKenna and Aline. I love that this turns into a revenge story because Aline basically broke McKenna's heart, and so now he's kind of hell-bent on revenge against her. And it's just a stunning romance. And there's also a secondary romance between her sister and his business partner. I can't remember their names. I think Gideon can't remember her sister's name, but their romance was adorable as well, and it didn't take away from Alina McKenna's romance. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you could have predicted that I was going to talk about this book in this video. That's The Lady Gets Lucky by Joanna Shupe. My top favorite Joanna Shupe romance. Probably my second favorite historical romance ever, or maybe third favorite, because again, the magic might be my second favorite. So this might be my third favorite, but like, to say I love this is putting it very lightly. This is between Kit and Alice. It is kind of a friends to lovers vibe, but it's definitely lessons in seduction. Alice comes to Kit asking for lessons because she desperately wants to get out from under her mother. She wants to find a man to marry, but she needs experience in seducing someone. And so he is willing to help her out if she helps him with opening his supper club. And this is literally one of the most beautiful and sweet romances I've ever read. And because it's Joanna Shupe, it's also an incredibly sexy romance. I want to reread this soon, now that I'm talking about it. Now that I'm talking about so many of these books, I want to reread them. Next up is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. This is a book that means so much to me for a few reasons. So this is a reverse Pretty Woman type of story. We have Stella, who hires Michael. This is another lessons in seduction story. She hires Michael to help her with things like flirting and sex, so that she can eventually date and marry someone. And oh my God, I related so much to Stella, it's almost scary. And this is the book that actually clued me into the fact that I myself may have autism. I do identify as being neurodivergent, and I have to thank this book and this author for bringing some of my personality quirks to my attention, because then I started doing my own research and discovering so many things about myself. But this is also just an amazing and hot romance. I love Michael. I think he's a wonderful hero. All right, we just have a few more left. I have to bring up Learn My Lesson by Katie Robert. This is hands down my favorite poly romance. This is in the Wicked Villain series, book 2. And this is a series that are all Disney movie retellings where the villains get the girl and have their romance and happily ever after. This does take place in a world where there is no magic, by the way. I did want to point that out. But we have Hades, who owns a bunch of territory in the city that they all live in. So he's been in a relationship with Meg for quite a few years, and they're not in a great place in their relationship. They started playing mind games with each other. It's just become kind of toxic. And so then we have Hercules, who comes into the picture. He starts working at a club that Hades owns, I believe. So Hades decides to play mind games with both Hercules and Meg, and they eventually all three fall in love with each other. It's so hot. Oh my God, this book is incredibly sexy, but it's also a really great romance. It's so well done. I love all three of these characters, and I love the world that this takes place in. I mean, I had to bring up Archer's Voice, one of my probably top 3 favorite contemporary romances. This is a small town romance that has a very epic feel to it, in my opinion. And this is about Archer, who is mute. He is a virgin hero as well. He lives in this small town, and Bree, our heroine, comes to live in the small town. It seems like she's escaping someone or something. And so this is just a really sweet friends to lovers romance between the two of them. There's a lot of suspense elements in this as well. So well done, amazing. Another book that I need to reread. I can't believe I've only read this book once. Then I had to bring up Wolf Gone Wild, the Stay a Spell series by Juliet Cross. This is absolutely my favorite paranormal romance series ever. I am obsessed. I love Juliet Cross's writing style. I love that this series takes place in New Orleans, in the Garden District area. It just feels like home to me because I am from the New Orleans area, and I adore every book pretty equally in this series. I probably couldn't pick a favorite, which is why I'm just talking about book 1, which is about Mateo, who is a werewolf. He's put under a hex, so he can't shift into his wolf form. And so his wolf form, known as Alpha, is kind of taking over his life inside his head, and he's kind of going crazy. And so he meets with Evie Savoy, our heroine, who is a witch, to try to get the hex taken off of him. These are just sweet and sexy romances that have a small town feel, but they're also paranormal and absolutely amazing. Last but not least, I mean, come on. I had to talk about The Wall of Winnipeg and Me, my absolute favorite Mariana Zapata book. I have not read a lot of her books, I will admit that, but this book is truly next level. You know, this is chunky, it's over 600 pages, but I found myself wanting to read even more about this couple. I probably could have read like 100 more pages about them. I was absolutely obsessed. This was the book that showed me that Mariana Zapata is going to ruin me for all other romance authors. This is next level. I'm obsessed with Aiden, our grumpy hero, and this is a marriage of convenience romance, and as you can tell, it is a sports romance. Aiden is a football player and Vanessa is our heroine, and oh my god, it's so good. All right, that is it for 30 books that I love for the 30 years that I have been on this planet. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that you got some recommendations and got to know me a little bit more through this video and through the books that I absolutely adore. I would love it if you would leave a comment down below if you want to talk about any of these books or series. I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe. And I thank you so much in advance if you do. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!